The Bolivarian National Guard of Venezuela has held a military exercise in Caracas. President Nicolás Maduro welcomed the military that once again reaffirmed its loyalty to him and the government of Venezuela. This event is part of the preparations for the bicentennial civic military operation of Angostura that will take place between February 10th to 15th. For the first time, the event will be held in honor of Simón Bolívar and the 1821 Congress of Angostura, which contributed to the independence of Venezuela.
The recent chain of social, political and public events push us from simply guaranteeing citizens' safety to ensuring national peace, sovereignty, prosperity and development in this country. The Bolivarian National Guard of Venezuela is the backbone of our union's integrity.
And supporters of President Maduro have taken to the streets across cities in the states of Miranda and Carabobo to oppose foreign intervention. The president of the National Constituent Assembly joined the demonstration in Carabobo, where he reaffirmed Venezuela will not allow any foreign intervention or coup attempt.
The United States wants to invade us. They clearly want to do this, and a good part of the European Union is helping them to achieve this. Colombia is also helping them to achieve this, the Colombian government and the Brazilian government. But they haven't thought of something, that this nation is also fighting, that this nation with its military won't accept anyone or anything, that this nation says that we are free, that this nation won't give up.
And in the country is business as usual, despite the mainstream media reporting of unrest. The streets of Caracas are calm as Venezuelans carry out their daily tasks, despite news that violent acts are happening every day. These are images from the La Pastora neighborhood. On Thursday, oil workers in Venezuela led what they called a great anti-imperialist march to demand respect for self-determination. Our correspondent reports from Caracas.
Speaking in one voice, workers of the state on PDVSA made clear their anti-imperialist position. They called attention of U.S. plans to dismantle the Venezuelan constitution.
We are a sovereign people, and we decide that Nicolás Maduro will be our president, because sovereignty resides in the people.
Protesters say the embargo imposed by Donald Trump's government against the oil subsidiary Citgo reveals their neoliberal intentions. The new U.S. sanctions will block $7 billion in Venezuelan goods and $11 billion in oil exports for the year 2019.
Today we can see how the U.S. aims to snatch our wealth. Today the world sees how the USA has lowered its mask, and we can see that the whole world supports the Venezuelan people.
The Venezuelan government continues to raise its voice to denounce the attempted coup d'etat that is being carried out in the nation. President Nicolás Maduro has urged dialogue and respect for the constitution and has denounced the U.S. intentions to appropriate Venezuela's wealth. Venezuelans say they want to live in peace and stop the intervention.
The Secretary General of the United Nations has again emphasized his commitment to peace and dialogue in Venezuela. Through his spokesman, Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the UN recognizes the elected government of Venezuela. Guterres added that his officers are ready to assist in achieving a political solution to the situation in the Latin American country.
The Secretary General reiterated that what he's already said publicly in his letter, which is basically his concern regarding the crisis in the country and the impact that it is having with the Venezuelan people. He said the United Nations is ready to increase its activities in Venezuela in the areas of humanitarian assistance and development. However, he said that for this, the United Nations needs the consent and the cooperation of the government. The Secretary General again underscored that recognizing governments is not for the Secretariat and for member states, and he noted that his relations with member states, he respects decisions taken particularly by the General Assembly and the Security Council, and he reiterated in his letter the availability of his good offices to help find a political solution to the crisis.
And a UN human rights expert has rejected the U.S. sanctions against Venezuela. Idris Jaisari has warned that the measures can lead to starvation and medical shortages. He says the sanctions are adding to the crisis and are a violation of international law. And Venezuela's ambassador to South Africa says it's comforting to have allies in Africa in the wake of political tension fueled by the United States and its allies. Our correspondent Matuba has the story.
The political tensions in Venezuela have gone beyond the country's borders, with nations expressing support for President Nicolas Maduro. The support comes against a wave of disapproval from the United States and its allies. Venezuela's foreign mission in South Africa says there's an attempted coup in Venezuela.
This is a coup d'etat. This is a coup d'etat in development in Venezuela in this moment, with United States in front of the coup d'etat, and with the leader of the opposition in this moment, Juan Guaidó, of the United States. And unfortunately, some countries in Latin America follow them.
The head of the Venezuela's mission in South Africa says attempts by the United States to destabilize Latin America is a pattern that reminds her of other regions where the U.S. got involved in domestic politics.
This was the same in Iraq, was the same in Libya, in all the countries that when U.S. intervened. It's the same plan.
When asked why the United States was keen on removing the current government in Venezuela, she says the reasons are no secret.
The response is simple: our natural resources. Our natural resources and the political difference between Trump and Nicolas Maduro. But also is the same difference with the Commander Chavez. The problem is we are a democratic government walking to socialism, and we have a lot of natural resources.
Ambassador Moreno Marida lamented that mainstream media did not cover the Venezuela story objectively, and this, she says, causes even more tensions.
The media only show the information the information of the opposition, and it's not true. And yesterday I spoke with one journalist here, and I asked him why you didn't show the images in Venezuela with the people in support of our President Nicolas Maduro.
Venezuela's government believes it's the overwhelming sanctions from the supporters of self-proclaimed President Juan Guaidó that are worsening the situation. Matuba Mahlachi, Telesur, Pretoria.
Supporters of Maduro have held demonstrations in Barcelona. Protesters gathered outside the European Union headquarters in the city after the body recognized Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaidó as interim president. Representative of the pro-Catalan independence CUP party, Maria Sirvent, said that the people of Venezuela have already voted and that there must be respect for that result. And in London, pacifist groups and trade unions organized an emergency rally to show their support and solidarity with the Venezuelan government. Hundreds of people gathered at the headquarters of the National Education Union to reject Guaidó's claim to be interim president and the U.S. intervention in Venezuela. And Grenada citizens also staged a demonstration at the Venezuelan embassy to express their solidarity. They're calling for the protection of the Caribbean as a zone of peace and for respect for Venezuela's sovereignty. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Dozens of demonstrators have gathered in front of the Minas Gerais State Buildings in Belo Horizonte in Brazil to call for an investigation into the Vale dam disaster. People were also protesting against the regional government and mine owners Vale, who they consider responsible for the tragedy. Some protesters covered themselves in mud, a reference to the toxic mudslide that engulfed the area, equivalent to the size of 100 football pitches.
So we are the first in this tragic 7-day period to honor, to remember all these people killed in this environmental crime. The first to mark our position on what we do not want, that this remains unpunished once again. And as of today is the day the deputies of the state of Minas Gerais take office, we are also here. We want the proactive attitude of this assembly to make an investigation into all of this, and more importantly, to change the laws that appropriate this tragedy that killed 400 people.
Residents of Rio de Janeiro have taken to the streets to march in solidarity with the victims of the Vale dam collapse and condemn the company for the environmental damage it unleashed in the region. Our correspondent Andrea Veira reports from the ground.
It has been 7 days since the mining dam burst near the town of Brumadinho in the state of Minas Gerais. Here in Rio de Janeiro, people have gathered to show solidarity with the victims and also to condemn the owner of the dam, the company Vale. According to these protesters and various experts, the company actively contributed to this environmental disaster. The tragedy has left at least 110 people dead, but the death toll is likely to rise as over 230 people are still missing. This company continues to operate without guaranteeing the safety of its operations, its workers, the residents living nearby, and the environment. Therefore, the movement's Fearless People Front and Brazil Popular Front, along with other social organizations, have organized this march against the company Vale that is responsible for this environmental crime in the town of Brumadinho.
We thank Andrea Vieira for that report, and residents in the Brazilian town of Brumadinho have held a mass for the victims of the dam collapse. Holding candles, they prayed for the victims and their relatives. At least 110 people died and 238 remain missing. Only 71 victims have been identified so far. The environmental impact in the area is still to be evaluated. Residents along the river banks say the fish they relied on for food are floating dead to the surface. Ahead of Sunday's elections in El Salvador, the Electoral Court has been distributing electoral packages in the country's 14 regions. International observers are in the country to monitor the process. Our correspondent Ernesto Avalos has more.
El Salvador Supreme Electoral Court has announced that 1,595 station polls are ready for Election Day. Most of them are located in schools where police forces have already been deployed. New measures have also been taken to avoid any technology attack by hackers against the official website of the Supreme Electoral Court. It has also been reported that over 1,400 national and international observers will monitor the process. Salvadorans living abroad have returned to the country to exercise the right to vote.
And Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has arrived in Barbados for an official visit. Arreaza was welcomed by Prime Minister Mia Mottley. The two delegations are expected to revise their cooperation bilateral agreements and discuss different ways to ensure peace in the Caribbean region. The Fourth International Conference for the World Balance concluded this Thursday in Havana with the signature of the World Council Declaration. The document expresses deep concerns about the policies and promote conflicts and ignores multilateralism.
Great pleasure. Intellectuals from around the world gathered in Havana for a 4-day conference to debate about the challenges Latin America and the Caribbean is facing as the region fights to keep its independence and peace. The event focused on the fight against the U.S. interventionism attempts.
I think that we have to work hard, following Fidel's advice about promoting ideas and awareness in our people. We have to do this, but now with the help of technology and new platforms. These are the platforms our enemies are using to spread lies and fake news. We have to use these platforms to spread the truth about what is happening, as too many people are confused about this.
The professor and member of Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly, Adán Chávez, talked about the U.S. intervention attempts in his country. He said Chávez supporters will not give up their fight to defend socialism, regardless the difficult circumstances.
We have to join against imperialism and for a better world. We have to follow the motto that has joined us here, together and for the good of all, convinced that we want a better world that can only be achieved through socialism.
The fourth International Conference for World Balance coincided with the 166th anniversary of the birth of Cuban thinker José Martí. The historian Eusebio Leal says that Martí's ideas promote equality and balance among the people.
Martí's ideas came from his convictions and Christianity, from the love he spread. He said that in the hardest fights, we have to love justice and fight against our enemies.
The final declaration rejects interventionism against any country of the region, as well as rejection of any attempt to destabilize legitimate governments.
We want to reassure our solidarity with the Venezuelan people and its government. We reject any coup attempts pushed by Washington. Venezuela's domestic affairs should be solved by their people through dialogue, something that President Nicolás Maduro has asked for.
The declaration also rejects any attempts of political persecution, demands former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva to be freed, and congratulates Cuba on the 60th anniversary of the revolution.
Fragments of what appears to be a meteorite were found after strong explosions reportedly rang out in western Cuba. Social media lit up as several people in the province of Pinar del Rio and nearby communities reported seeing a smoke trail in the sky and feeling strong tremors. Some also reported seeing a bright blue explosion in the sky. Authorities are still investigating. Bolivian President Evo Morales has launched the International Year of Indigenous Languages at the UN headquarters in New York. The international seminar will showcase the world's ancient tongues and highlight the need to conserve them. Members of indigenous communities have attended the event. Morales will also meet with the UN Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly. Our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, tells us more.
Bolivia will celebrate the International Year of Indigenous Language with two international events. One of them is a conference aimed to recognizing indigenous language as a tool for the people, as a source of knowledge. The second will be an international seminar about indigenous languages and their contribution to development. The United Nations declared 2019 the International Year for the Indigenous People after an initiative by President Evo Morales, who is the first indigenous person to rule this country with majority indigenous population. Morales promoted changes in the constitution that even changed the name of republic for that of plurinational state. This constitution recognizes 36 indigenous nationalities and declares those 36 languages as official languages of the state, along with Spanish. However, from these 36 indigenous nationalities recognized by the constitution, at least 3 have almost disappeared. During his speech at the United Nations at the launching of the International Year for the Indigenous People, Morales proposed 10 measures to protect indigenous languages. Among them, recognizing these languages as official languages of the state and implementing educative models that include this knowledge. The United Nations have warned that in Latin America, 1/5 of the 522 indigenous nationalities in the region stop speaking their own native languages, and among those 522, 44 are using Spanish as their mother tongue and 55 Portuguese. From the 420 languages in use, 26% are at risk of disappearing.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 32 Palestinians have been injured by Israeli gunfire as they protested for the 45th week at the Gaza border. They were protesting Israel's continued occupation of Gaza. They are also demanding the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes from which they were driven in 1948 to make way for the new state of Israel. Around 250 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza since March 2018. And with less than 3 weeks to go before Nigeria heads to crucial presidential elections, security remains the biggest issue on the minds of many voters. Boko Haram and other militant groups in the northeast of the country have threatened to attack police stations on election day. The region has seen an upsurge in militant attacks in the recent months against both civilians and soldiers, despite claims by the government that they are on the verge of defeating Boko Haram. Former President of Ivory Coast, Laurent Gbagbo, is set to be released by the International Criminal Court following an order by the court's appeal judges. Gbagbo was acquitted of war crimes charges in January but remained in detention as a result of objections and an appeal raised by the prosecution team. He stood accused of orchestrating a wave of violence that claimed over 3,000 lives after disputed elections in 2010.
Imposed on Mr. Gbagbo and Mr. Blake.
The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has opposed the proposed electricity tariff increase by the state power company. The union says the increase will lead to an increase in the cost of basic food items. It added that the increase will also affect small and medium businesses, leading to job losses. The state power company is considering a 45% tariff increase in the next 3 years.
We know what this tariff increase will mean to the poor, will mean to the working class, who are struggling already with high cost of electricity. But at the same time, we know what will this do to the industry, to an already ailing economy. We know that once ESCOM is granted this increase, companies are going to retrench as part of their strategy to deal with cost of doing business. As a result, the rate of unemployment in South Africa will continue to grow higher and higher.
Women in Afghanistan fear that any peace deal between the Taliban and the U.S. could erode hard-won freedoms. In the nearly 2 decades since the Taliban lost power, rules that barred women from education and work have been chipped away. They fear that if the Taliban return to power, their rights will be eroded. And finally, Filipino Catholics living in the United Arab Emirates are getting ready for Pope Francis's upcoming visit. Worshippers at the St. Francis of Assisi Church in Dubai attended a mass dedicated to the victims of an attack in the Philippines that killed 20 people. The attack was claimed by the Islamic State. Pope Francis's visit is aimed at promoting interreligious dialogue and tolerance.
Pope Francis, he always gives a message of forgiveness and mercy. So I think we have to put it in heart, all people, as government and leaders, that to be merciful, to forgive. So because if we are merciful, if we forgive, there's no conflict, no bad relationship, as long as we understand and support each other. So I think it's a very relevant and the right time for us to have this message.
It's so amazing, and I'm so happy. This is my first time that I attend this Holy Mass of Pope Francis, and we are very blessed. Out of how many people? 1,000 of people, 120,000 of people, and we are blessed we get the ticket. And in fact, I just get my ticket today.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.